Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with the SEM podcast. I'm Johnny Bottles, and this is Motorhead, my partner in crime. And we have a very, very special guest today. She's the daughter of the man that scared the bejesus out of me when I was a young boy.
Me too.
She's the daughter of Mayor Pampero Firpo, the lovely Mary Freeze or Fries?
Freeze. Hi, guys.
Freeze. There you go. How are you, Miss
Hello.
Mary?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We saw you were on Twitter, and we were all talking about how much we loved your father.
Oh.
And he was oh my God. I was scared to death when I saw him as a kid, especially when he did the bit with the steel bar in his teeth and bent it
Yes.
in the shape of a V. Now, I got to ask you first question out of the chute, right out of the chute. Was that a gimmick bar?
No, in fact, I was just going to say that. You read my mind. I asked him as an adult, I said, was that just kind of an easy thing? And you can tell right before he puts it in his mouth, he puts it on the ground. You can hear that it's really solid steel. And he said, no, that was, I don't remember if he said a 1/4 inch thick. He said it's solid steel and it was really hard to bend. He was very strong, enormously strong. So he said that was the real deal, and he put the napkin in his mouth to protect his teeth. And you can see that he's really working hard while when he's doing that, putting that in his mouth. So that was the real deal.
Excellent.
Now, your dad's real name was Juan. I'm probably going to butcher this, but I'm going to try. Kachmanian?
Yeah.
Kachmanian. I was close.
Kachmanian.
And he was born in Buenos Aires in 1930. I'm going through my Wikipedia notes right now.
Yeah.
Because we are a little professional here. We do bone up on our subjects and all that. Your paternal grandfather, his dad, was a Turkish boxing promoter.
He's actually Armenian. He was born in Turkey. His parents were born in Turkey, but they're of Armenian descent. And in 1915, when the genocide started between the Turks, who were Muslims, trying to wipe out all the Armenians who were Christians, it was a huge tragedy that preceded the Holocaust. That was in 1915. So my father wasn't born yet. He was born in 1930, like you said, but his parents were of Armenian descent and living in Turkey, which was dangerous for Armenians at that time. And so his family, his parents ended up leaving Turkey and going first to Lebanon. And then from Lebanon, they went to Buenos Aires, and he was born in 1930. So they got to Buenos Aires sometime probably in the early to mid 1920s.
Interesting.
Nice.
Interesting. Now, he made his debut in professional wrestling in 1953. He was trained. What did he start in 1950 and got trained by Rudy Dusek?
Well,
the brothers.
Yeah, that was Joe Dusek was one of his favorite people and promoters, Joe Dusek in Omaha. In fact, on Sundays, I call his daughter Joanne. That was something my dad and I did every Sunday, as he would call his sisters and he'd say, let's call Joanne and talk to her. So Joe Dusek's daughter, Joanne, still alive and well in her 80s, living in Omaha.
Amazing.
That was somebody, my dad said he always respected Joe Dusek as a promoter. And like you said, Dusek was a wrestler himself. There were, I think, Joanne, she's told me before, I think Joe, there were 8 kids, and I think 5 or 6 of them were boys. And the Dusek Riot Squad, the group of Dusek brothers, Emil and Rudy and Ernie and Joe. And so they all had a hand in helping to shape his career when he came to the United States. But he started in Argentina. His dad was a boxing hopeful. He was an undefeated light. He might have been a featherweight, his dad, and he was an Olympic hopeful, but it just didn't work out with the political situation. He was an Armenian national and then living in Argentina, and his Olympic dreams, his father's for boxing didn't work out. So his dad began promoting boxing shows in Argentina as a side gig because his dad, my dad and his whole family were multilingual. So his dad spoke Turkish, Armenian, Spanish, Greek, multilingual. My dad spoke Armenian, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian.
8 languages, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, multilingual. So he worked in a factory as a foreman, my grandpa did, and with his language abilities, that was his main job. But then he promoted shows locally, and my dad was always around what he called the sporting life, around boxing and my dad loved soccer growing up in Argentina, and he was actually really fast in track. He was a fast runner, like a sprinter, and you wouldn't think of that seeing his physique, but he was really agile and enjoyed running and soccer and things like that. So when he got out, my dad had to go into the military, which was during peacetime in 1948, and do mandatory service, which was the rule in Argentina for boys when they were 18. And when he got out of the military, before he got out, one of the commanding sergeants thought that my dad was related to a local wrestler and asked for tickets to the wrestling show. So my dad went and talked to the local promoter there, and the promoter said, "Oh, you're not in wrestling. What's your background?" And my dad was telling him, and the promoter just said, "Well, I think we could do something with you. When you get discharged from the Army, come see me." And that was how the star was born. My dad said that when he first got there, they stretched him and were like really,
oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah, like testing him out. Yeah. So he said it was like a rough entree into the sport, but he said that, really quickly he caught on, and that the promoter, he was using a gimmick, Ivan the Terrible, as a Russian. It was like a Russian gimmick that he was using. He wrestled as like the Russian, like the beard and the Rasputin, the big hat and everything. So he wrestled in Argentina, and then the promoter said, "I hate to lose you, but you got to move on and just make your name." So he went to all the neighboring countries like Chile, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, Colombia. He wrestled all through South America, then into Mexico, and then into the US. So he started, I think, 1952, 53 were his first matches in South America, and then mid 50s through South America, Mexico, and then went into the United States. His first match was actually in Texas against Don Leo Jonathan, 1954.
Oh, wow.
1954, I hope I'm right. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
did he log how many? Go ahead, Motorhead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, wasn't it the great Jack Dempsey that gave your dad the name Pampero Firpo?
Yeah, it was. Jack Dempsey was a celebrity referee in different areas, and was the referee in the Don Leo Jonathan match. And my dad was going as Firpo. No, I'm sorry. He was going as Ivan the Terrible. And then Dempsey had said, since you're from Argentina, he said, "You impress me as like a strong fighter." And he said, "You should go by Firpo and just say that you're the kayfabe son of one of Dempsey's famous opponents, Luis Angel Firpo." Yeah, he was called the Wild Bull of the Pampas. He said, "Why don't you do that?" And so my dad started going by Firpo. It was kind of an interesting transition because looking in different promotions at the time, like he wrestled in Oklahoma for Leroy McGurk, in Texas at the time was Morris Siegel, and then he wrestled in Nebraska with Joe Dusick, and he kind of transitioned. It was like Ivan the Terrible, and it was like Ivan Firpo, and then so he sometimes was billed as Ivan Firpo, like he started taking the last name Firpo, and then it became Pampero Firpo. Pampero is a big like wind that knocks everything, that it's kind of like a hurricane that blows through the grasslands in Argentina, the Pampas. So yeah, so Dempsey gave him that name. I think it was just because they were saying that the Russian gimmick was pretty overused. There was nothing exceptional about it, and there were other people using that gimmick. And he said, get something unique, and why don't you go by, say that you're Firpo's son. So I brought a few pictures. There were so many boxers that were involved in wrestling, like Joe Louis, Cleveland. My dad was with him. And then my dad met Rocky Marciano in Hawaii. I love this picture. It's a great picture.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
My dad, Rocky Marciano.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
See, my dad, he said that he tried boxing, and he said, "Well, boxing wasn't for me." I love this picture. He said, "Boxing wasn't for me." He said, "I felt bad. He said, I knocked my opponent down, and then I went to go make sure he was okay." He's like, he said, so my dad said boxing. My dad was a real softie. He was a real sweet person. He said it wasn't for me, but, he did really like it. I was looking for a picture with Dempsey. I tried to grab some pictures. My dad with Bruno Sammartino at WrestleMania.
Oh, excellent.
Wow. So there's no glare, but yeah, my dad wrestled Bruno in like 1960, early 60s on the East Coast. When my dad started wrestling in Texas, he said that Antonina Rocca gave my dad kind of the push from Texas to go into New York, and Rocca was teaming with Miguel Perez in New York, and they brought my dad in to do different shows. And Rocca was from Argentina Rocca, Antonina Rocca. And so I think that helped with my dad, like being a fellow countryman. And my dad said that Rocco was his idol when my dad was younger. I think Rocco was like 10 years older than my dad. Sorry, I was trying to find that Dempsey picture, but I have him on my Twitter is P as in Pampero, P Firpo 1, PFIRPO. And in the media section, I put a bunch of photos that he kept. This is another one I really like. This is Peter Maivia on the, I can't tell if that's your left or over here.
Yeah.
And then
That's Peter Maivia. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then people sometimes think that's Mr. Fuji, but it was Harold Sakata, and that was in Hawaii. And
Harold Sakata.
Late 1960s. He got a he played a villainous character. Odd Job. Yeah, he played a villainous character in James Bond movie. Yeah. I did find one, Dempsey. This is not a good picture. So I had these pictures kind of stacked on top of each other. And unfortunately, this is one with Jack Dempsey, but they have better pictures where they're like posing. Cool. And this is cool. I think that, this is New York City, 1960. So
wow.
And so from there, it's pretty amazing. And my dad started in the United States. He went to Omaha too. And they said, it says in his Wikipedia, he was trained by Rudy Dusick. And, he'd already been wrestling for a few years, but maybe they just helped him with, the American style of wrestling or helped him kind of adapt. And my dad, when he came to the United States, was not fluent in English. And so it took him a few years to adjust and to acclimate. But he got along well with everyone. He had a lot of charisma and just was a very sincere person. This is a picture of my dad in the Army, by the way. This is one without all the hair.
Wow, look at him.
All right.
Yeah, standing in front of some tanks, 1948. It's a pretty big difference. This is one of his famous promo pictures. And so seeing him with all the hair and he's holding on to a cougar. He said that when they photographed this, the guy who was the photographer had one of those big cameras in the 1970s with the flash bulb. And he said that they when they took the photo, the flash bulb scared the mountain lion and he reared up and took his claw and just like smacked it really hard. And my dad said he felt the paw like go across his face and he closed his eyes and he said, I could have lost my eye. So he said the cat was afraid of the camera, but such a difference, like the side by side. So in this photo, in the black and white with the wrestling, he was 44. And in the Army photo, he probably was 18 or 19. So.
Awesome photos.
Yeah, so I have so many photos and I just grabbed like a little kind of a section of them. He took so many pictures. These are from Detroit, the Body Press magazine. I love these, this little sequence of in the NWA territory when he was wrestling with the original Sheik and
the Wild Man from Argentina.
And then he won the U.S. championship in Detroit. And so picture of him wrestling's new U.S. champion. And then this is a picture. This is pretty cool. I got married in 2003 and I got married in Hawaii, even though I live in California. And I got married in Hawaii. My mom and dad had also gotten married in Hawaii. So this is a family photo. This is me and then my sister, Julie, my brother. And this is my dad. He was 73 years old here. And when we went to Hawaii, we were in Maui and he and my mom had lived in Honolulu in the late 60s. And he was a big star in Hawaii wrestling as the missing link. And the promoter was...
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. He was wrestling in Hawaii as the missing link. And Dave Meltzer actually had told me, I learned from listening to Dave Meltzer and Jim Cornette and Brian Last and all these wrestling, Mike Mooneyham and Tom Burke and just different wrestling historians. But my dad had told me that the promoter in Hawaii didn't like Pampero Firpo, the name, for whatever reason. So he started wrestling as the missing link. And he lived in Hawaii in the late 60s for about 2 years. But this was in 2003, and you can see like he doesn't have the hair anymore. I mean, his eyes and his voice were always very distinct, but we were shocked by how many people recognized my dad in 2003 in Hawaii and people just coming up to him, people in their 40s, like late 30s, 40s, 50s, and just with tears in their eyes saying he was such a big part of their childhood and their upbringing. And it's amazing how much wrestling, how loyal the fans are and how much it just means so much to them generation after generation. So that was really a thrill. And some of them, like they didn't even see him. They just said they heard his voice. Like we were at a car rental place or we were at dinner and people just came up to him. They called him Link and said it was so good to see him. And that was really fun for my family and me. Yeah.
The amazing thing about your father was not just what he did in the ring, the interviews were one of a kind, especially with, as I'm sure of course you've heard this countless times. Oh yeah, and that was stolen, of course, by Randy Savage. Randy Savage at the time was cobbling together different bullet points from guys doing interviews. He'd watch everything and put it all together, and he stole "Oh Yeah" from your father. But the motor, we were talking about that earlier. The shrunken head.
Chimu, do you still have Chimu?
Yes, I do have Chimu. He's at my brother's house. He's in a little velvet bag. And yeah, Chimu was a real shrunken head that my dad got in Ecuador from a tribal chief, somebody in an indigenous tribe in Ecuador. And he was a real shrunken head. And I'd asked my dad about like, who was the shrunken head? Was that a relative? Was that like a war, like somebody like an enemy, and that they shrunk their head? And he didn't really tell me the story. I don't know if he even knew it, but he said it was presented to him as a sign of respect and reverence by the tribal chief. And it was when he was wrestling. So he was wrestling in Ecuador. And he got that. I was looking online with like, what do we do with this shrunken head? You know, now a lot of artifacts are being repatriated. Like I said to my brother, should we send him back to Ecuador? You know, should we send him back? And, we had kind of researched it.
Chimus, man. I mean, they're the old school wrestling fans would pick up on it really quick. I mean, I would. I got my own Chimu right here, but it's just this pumpkin head guy I've had for years. But it's not a million.
Yeah. That was it was like a really cool talisman. He kept it with him. He said that Chimu meant it was their god of good luck. So he kept that. Okay. He said that brought him good luck, and he kept that with him throughout his career. He traveled with it. He had it at his house. We still have it at the house. So
awesome. That's awesome.
Well, yeah.
I tell you what, enough talking about your father. Let's talk about you, because I've always want to ask someone who's a child of a wrestler, what was it like for you growing up and having your father be such a wild man on TV? Were people afraid to talk to you? Did your friends say, I saw your father beat that guy up the other day? And back then, people believed it.
My brother and my sister said that was more common for them, because my brother was born in 1970. So he lived for a time. My brother lived for a time in Michigan when my dad was wrestling in the 70s with as a main heel in Sheik's promotion in the NWA. And a little plug for Brian Solomon's book, Blood and Fire. If any wrestling fans were interested in the story of the original Sheik, it's amazing. I'm about halfway through.
Awesome author. Yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. That is an amazing book. Blood and Fire, the story of the original Sheik by Brian Solomon. What an amazing story. And the Sheik was Lebanese, like my dad's family had lived in Lebanon for a while, and the Sheik was in the United States Army in World War II, served during World War II. I'm like learning all this stuff. It's amazing. But yeah, so my brother's 5 years older than I am. He was born in 1970. I was born in 75. So he said that he and my sister was born in 73. They said that sometimes, like, oh, I saw John and Julie's dad on TV. That was when we were living in California. They had local TV with promoter Roy Shire, and it was on KTVU, like Channel 2 TV. And so, yeah, they remember. I was in kindergarten in 1980, and that was pretty much when he hung it up, like 1980, 1981. So it didn't really happen a lot to me. But when we were out and about, sometimes people would recognize him, and he was always just at that time, like after I was born, or like late 70s, 1980. He was just, he didn't keep in character the way he did, like when he was, like how Sheik, he and Sheik, like these masters of kayfabe, they just always kept in character. But toward the end of his career, he was 50 years old in 1980. He wasn't, he didn't keep in character the way he did in like the 60s and 70s, so people would approach him. And he came to my elementary school for show and tell and talked to the kids, and they all lined up, and he like lifted them up and kind of did a body slam and put them on their feet, and just told some stories. But he always protected the business though. Like if the kids said, like, is it fake? And he would say, it's a very touchy word with me. Like it's, and then he would talk about his litany of injuries that he had that were real. And he never he never exposed the business like that. So it wasn't that he didn't stay in character, but he also didn't, share any professional.
Very true professional. And from what I've read and heard and seen, nobody ever had anything bad to say. None of the guys in the locker room, none of the boys any time ever had anything bad to say about Pampero Firpo. Said he was respected by everybody in the business. Everybody.
Was your father plagued with any type of injuries?
He
it was just like the nagging injuries from being in the ring.
To the end, like his neck. I mean, this also could have just been wear and tear being elderly, because he was still driving in his early 80s, and my sister and I would kind of wince because like he couldn't turn his head, to look over his shoulder when he was driving. And that could also be being somebody in his 80s, but I'm sure the wrestling didn't help with neck issues. And
right.
He had some knee issues. He worked at the post office following his wrestling career, and he did that from 1986 until he retired in 2008, and he was 78 when he retired, and he was doing processing. He didn't deliver mail, he processed, and those mail sacks are so heavy, and he was like sorting and processing and carrying, and he was able to do that, well into his late 70s, and just again was exceptionally strong. But I know he had some arthritis, he had some carpal tunnel issues, probably from sorting. He just was a physically very strong person. He always attributed that to a clean lifestyle. He said no smoking, no drinking. He'd have like an occasional beer, but he wasn't a heavy drinker. He said no drugs, right. And always training, always trying to eat healthfully. So yeah, he lived, we lost him at the beginning of 2020, January, and he would have been 90 years old in April of that year. So he had remarkable longevity, especially for people in his peer group in that era.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was it? I'm sure he's talked to you about the best moments of his career. What was his like his top 2 or top 3 moments?
I would say winning those championships, like winning the U.S. championship, the NWA. He won so many titles.
He won it 3 times, didn't he?
Yeah, and he won so many titles. Like he had a whole list. He had them typewritten out. It was like Campeon, like championships, and he had them all listed. Like everywhere he went, like Texas championship, Hawaii championship, all the regions and territories. And so I think winning those titles meant a lot to him. And hi, everyone. Hi, Jason. Hi, Donnie. He didn't keep the titles, unfortunately, but I know winning the titles meant a lot to him. I know going to Madison Square Garden was a huge thrill. So he did that before he wrestled Pedro Morales in the early 70s for Vince McMahon Sr. He wrestled in Madison Square Garden in 1960 with Antonina Rocca. And different opponents like Skull Murphy, Brute Bernard, like people from like early like 1950s.
Murphy, man. Talk about just those names you said, all the ones you've mentioned so far. Talk about amazing company to be met. It's like the who's who of the pioneers at that time of professional wrestling.
Oh, for sure. And anywhere he went, like his sister, he had 2 sisters, and one of them passed a year after my dad when she was 86. The other one is still alive. She's 84, and she's preparing to move right now. She lives in San Jose where I live. So she said, I found some of your dad's wrestling stuff, because he kept so many clippings. I just brought an example downstairs from the one of the scrapbooks that he kept, and this is one from when he went to Japan, and he made 3 tours in Japan. The last one was in 1980, and he was wrestling in Japan against Baba and Inoki and Jumbo Sharuda in a 3-man tag with Bruiser Brody and Ernie Ladd and my dad. I mean, it was like really amazing. So, it was like these foundational, this is all from Japan, but he kept all of these scrapbooks. And so my aunt said, I have some of your dad's clippings, and she said, I'll give them to you. So she gave me, he had a bunch of posters. This is one of the posters here locally. This is from the Civic Auditorium in San Jose.
Nice.
Right down the street. And then there's and then this looks like Brock Lesnar to me. That's Pat Patterson. That's a young Pat Patterson.
Yeah, good old Pat Patterson. Like Stan Stasiak on the card too. Excellent.
Ray Stevens. My dad loved Ray Stevens. He said he was like one of the best, like a true professional. He loved Ray Stevens.
One of my dad's favorites of all time was Ray Stevens.
Yeah. So my dad, he didn't keep the titles, but he also kept. I wish I had Chimu with me right now, but he kept. I have a picture of him on my Twitter.
Hang out with Chimu, man.
This is one of his wrestling jackets.
Get a little good luck from Chimu, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, look at that.
This is one of his wrestling jackets that he kept. He always dressed in like leopard print and zebra print and things like that. But if you look at like the Cage Match database, or one of his fans sent me like a really extensive chronology with a lot of his matches. That's a good question. Is there a territory your father said never again after wrestling there? Probably Puerto Rico was the toughest, but he spoke Spanish and he just got along with everybody. So I think You know, I mean, especially if you're going into Puerto Rico and wrestling the Colones as a heel and they're trying to throw bottles at you and, you know, like trying to kill you on your way to the ring. So
tough crowd. Everyone says that. Yeah. Dutch Mantel especially said it was a tough crowd.
Yeah.
About that.
He wrestled in the 70s. 1979, 1980, he was with Kerry Von Erich. Kerry Von Erich and David Von Erich, and he was tag teaming with them. I can't think for a second right now who his partner was. It might have been Dick Steinborn, but he was in Puerto Rico like 1979, 1980. And I know that that was tough. Also, he did wrestle Harley Race. I saw that. They wrestled AWA for Gagne, and Harley was really young. It was like Handsome Harley Race, and he was teaming with Larry Hennig, and they were like they were supposed to be like this handsome like baby face. I know it was Larry the Axe Hennig, but I'm pretty sure it was Larry Hennig, Harley Race, and it was AWA for Vern Gagne. Oh, thank you. I was never in the wrestling business. I'm a school teacher, so I'm happy to be off school right now. I teach 6th grade. Yeah, I'm happy to be off from school. So off until August, but yeah, I'm so grateful that he kept so many of the things that he did. And he said it broke his heart to think of how many things he threw away over the years because he was moving from place to place, moving to, they led such an itinerant lifestyle for 15 years or so, 20 years when he came to the United States before he settled down in California and bought a house and everything. And he said, just from place to place, I threw things away. He has some things from South America from the mid 50s when he first started. And he said, I had so much more and I threw it away. But I'm grateful to his sister also for like keeping those clippings. There were posters like the ones that I showed you. I'm grateful that he kept the scrapbooks. They're so cool. And there's all these like just personal photos too that are really fun to look at. So when he wrestled against Don Leo Jonathan, they became really good friends. You know, he always called him Leo, like Leo, but my dad's accent, he would call him Leo. And he loved Don Leo Jonathan. Like they hung out a ton in Japan. And some other people on that tour were like Dick Beyer, the Destroyer, Dr. X, and oh my gosh, the Vachons, Mad Dog, Butcher Vachon.
Oh, yes.
Had a lot of affection for Butcher and Mad Dog. They wrestled in Omaha in Joe Dusick's territory together. And at that time, the Vachons had a Russian gimmick also. They were going, it was like Nikolai Zolotov, I think, was one of the Vachons. His junk would be our treasure. I know. I mean, I feel the same way. I was always the most interested in his clippings and stuff. This is Neff Maiyava from Hawaii, Neff Maiyava and Peter Maivia, and then my dad wrestled. Yeah, a lot of people, like, of course, Neff Maiyava and Peter Maivia being Samoan, but my dad was 100% Armenian, but he was so, like, ethnically indeterminate, you know, like, is he Russian? Is he Latin American? Is he Samoan? Is he, like, part black with that hair? Like, he could kind of
he was a chameleon, yeah.
My dad did understand. Thank you. It says, did your dad understand how loved he was by the fans? He really did. You know, what's funny is he continued to get fan mail up until he passed. My brother and I would get probably a half a dozen letters each a year from people sharing their stories about watching him in different arenas. And I always look at the postmark. It was like New York, Ohio, Detroit, Hawaii, like just different places where he was really popular, even here in the Bay Area. And they would oh, thank you. They would say things to him like, like you made me believe you were such an important part of my childhood. And they got so emotional. And toward the end of his life, it was right when I know like John Arezzi and different people, John Arezzi really started bringing conventions and people together in the 90s and having wrestlers. And people had reached out to my dad, but he was still working full time at the post office. And after he stopped wrestling, he always had a love for the business. He always had a love for the fans, but he wasn't somebody who, like felt the need to go back and make appearances and things like that. So he had gotten recruited. He would also do things without telling us, like without telling my sister and my brother and me. And by that time we were like in our 20s and 30s. And so he got an award from the Cauliflower Alley Club in Vegas. And he didn't tell us like that he was going. He went with Joanne Dusick. And I'm like, you got this award? You know, he just like went and got this men's wrestling award. He said, well, I'm going to go because Nick Bockwinkel is president. And he loved Nick Bockwinkel. They toured in Australia together. They wrestled in Hawaii together. And that was when Angelo Poffo was wrestling in the 60s, which is when Lanny Poffo and Randy were boys. And that's how they heard my dad's promos in Hawaii. And Lanny gave Randy the idea to take it. Lanny was such a dear friend. I'm still devastated by his passed.
That was incredible.
Heartbreaking. And Lanny, since I'm 48, Lanny was 68, 67. And I would like text him pictures. Who's this? That's gentleman Jim Haiti. And he died young when he was he died of a heart attack. He'd like tell me, I'd fill in all these things. He was such an amazing resource. I'm heartbroken that he's gone. But your dad. Oh, I'm sorry. So the question about the fans, when he went to Cauliflower Alley, he saw so many fans, and he did that. He went in 2000 and he went in 2001. 1 year he was getting an award. 1 year Joanne Dusick was receiving an award for her family, and they went together. They were always very dear friends. She still lives in Omaha, but we would get letters, we would share them with him. And he always said that too. He said he was grateful for the fans' support. They let him accomplish his dream of coming to the United States, which was his dream as a boy growing up in Argentina. When he gave his speech for the Cauliflower Alley Club, I put it on YouTube. It's Pampero Firpo Cauliflower CAC. And he gives a speech. And the first thing he says is, any wrestling fans, raise your hand. I want to thank all of you. So he knew that he was loved everywhere he went. People just loved him because Hillbilly Jim said, I love Hillbilly Jim, his positive energies. I believe you can't get anything back that you don't give away. And he always had a real heart for the people, a heart for his family, for the fans. So he got that back in abundance. And I like to think that with my students, the students are always writing little letters, I love you, I love your class. And I think when, we give love to them, to the people around us, it just comes back to us. So he was very aware of how much, people loved him. This is a great picture from Cauliflower Alley too. I put this is Danny Hodge in Oklahoma. So my dad wrestled with Danny Hodge.
That's awesome.
Wow. My dad, Danny Hodge, a real shooter. He loved Lou Thez. My dad's Lou Thez is the biggest. He said Lou Thez was the biggest, the daddy of all of us. So this is my dad.
Wow.
This is Lou Thez. This is the Destroyer.
In the middle. It is.
Destroyer Dick Biter.
All right. I got to make this bigger. I got to take eyeball this. Look at that.
This is
amazing.
Shinji Shibuya here. And then this is Hard-Boiled Haggerty over here.
A Hollywood actor, Hard-Boiled Haggerty.
Yep.
He was in a lot of movies as a bad guy.
This is a great photo. Yeah, it's a couple of questions about, do I watch wrestling now? I see, it's funny, I see most of it through my Twitter, but I do watch some of the wrestling shows. I just went to, here in the Bay Area, there's a wrestling promotion called West Coast Pro, and they're wonderful. And Chris Hero has just started booking the West Coast Pro shows, and he's engaged to Rachel Ellering, the daughter of Paul Ellering, and she wrestled at the last show. So I brought my 13-year-old daughter, and we watched it up in San Francisco. And West Coast Pro does an amazing job. Their shows are great. There was a packed house and a lot of energy. So it's fun to watch stuff live. I went to a few wrestling shows live, and sometimes I'll watch it. And my dad, he didn't watch much of it. The modern wrestling he didn't watch a lot of, but he liked watching the old wrestling. So he would come over every weekend and visit. I have a 16-year-old son, a 13-year-old daughter. So he would visit with his grandkids, and he'd always say, I want to watch, he's pull up Gagne and Thez, pull up Buddy Rogers against Lou Thez, pull up Don Leo Jonathan, and pull up Rocca. So I would pull up these different, from Fred Kohler in the Chicago Amphitheater, and he loved watching that. This is the Crusher and his wife, Faye. And this is at Cauliflower Alley. That was in Milwaukee, the man who made Milwaukee famous, the Crusher, with his training, running downtown with his beer barrels.
Cool.
Favorite name as a wrestler. Favorite name was Pampero Firpo for sure. And then he got inducted into the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2018. And so we went to Texas with him to get that induction, which was a huge highlight. That's when he was 88. It was amazing. This is Larry Hennig here. This is Larry Hennig. I want to say that's Stan Pulaski. I thought for a second Don Manukian, but that would have been earlier. So,
wow.
Yeah, he had, you look at his history, it's he just went, it's like a catalog. Anybody in that era that you could think of, he wrestled internationally. All the people in Japan, like I said, Baba and Inoki, the people in Mexico, El Santo, Gory Guerrero. He has all these scrapbooks, all, the biggest names, like Pedro Morales in the early 70s, wrestling for the WWF title, WWF for Vince McMahon, Bruno Sammartino, Rocca, the Dusicks, Nick Bockwinkel, Danny Hodge, Larry Hennig, Tony Bourne in Portland. I just saw the Dark Side of the Ring with Matt Bourne. I like to watch the wrestling stories. But my dad, he was interviewed with Bill Apter that I also have on YouTube. Bill Apter has it, theonewrestling.com. And it says like finding the great Pampero Firpo. And he'd asked my dad, he said, what are some like champions and things that you remember? And he mentioned Angelo Savoldi, who he wrestled in Oklahoma for Leroy McGurk. My dad said he was a master of the trade, Angelo Savoldi. He said Tony Bourne. He just put like on this short list, I'm sure I'm forgetting people, but it's so fascinating for me just to look at like and everyone he wrestled, even like people you consider more modern, like I said, Bruiser Brody, and he wrestled Randy Savage in Sheik's territory in Ohio. Randy has a Macho Man shirt on, and my dad's like putting him in some kind of like Boston Crab thing. So just went everywhere.
Really?
Went everywhere. That Bob Orton, senior, probably junior too, wrestled Rocky Johnson, wrestled Peter Maivia, just everywhere, all around the world, 21 different countries and 6 different continents. And
all the greats. He took on all the greats.
Amazing. 30-year career. Yeah. Do I know that my father's mentioned on Jim Cornette? Yes. I love that. I love that Jim Cornette show. I should have brought it with me, but after my dad passed, Collar and Elbow released a t-shirt. Collar and Elbow is the wrestling gear company. Al Snow is one of the owners. And Al Snow said, I think Lanny told me this. Who told me? Maybe Dr. Mike Lano. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mike Lano.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Wrestling historian. Yeah.
I love Mike Lano.
Dentist, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was like a shoot dentist. I should have mentioned he's the one who took all the Cauliflower Alley Club photos. I love Mike Lano. So he might have been the one who told me, because he's friendly with Al Snow. He said that Al Snow's gimmick in the 90s head was inspired by Chimu, because he said, I said, I never would have put that together. He said, yeah, your dad, his shrunken head. He said Al Snow watched him as a kid.
Wow.
And he said that, the head that he used to carry to the ring was like my dad's Chimu. So
it's funny how it all ties together. It's amazing the way the current business gets the influences from the past.
Yeah.
So really nice the way it all dovetails together.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Would you know that would also like to come on the SCM podcast? Who do you know?
We're trolling for guests.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure anybody would like to come on the show. As so many of us just love talking about wrestling and wrestling of the past from people who are true fans. It's a pleasure.
We appreciate you being on here, really. Seriously. I mean, I've already had another history lesson today, because I thought I knew a lot. Now I know a lot more. Thank you very much for this.
You're welcome.
And Motor, I watched that video of Cauliflower Alley. Was it 2001?
Yes.
That you put up. I watched that today, and I'm looking to see Pampero Firpo. And I see this guy in a tuxedo come up. I said, that guy looks like he could have been drinking a martini with Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro over in the corner. You know what I mean? He looked like your dad looked like a mobster at that time. Big bulky guy, like he could have been a mob enforcer. I said, wait a minute, that's the guy who had the hair and the beard and all that? Good Lord. So after that,
the wine. Come on, let's go, huh?
Right. I saw he was up there with Benny Hodge, Heenan, and he was being inducted by Nick.
Yeah, he really liked Bobby Heenan a lot. I mean, really had a lot of affection for him. And he was wrestling when, Bobby Heenan was wrestling, like 1960s, like early 1960s. So they crossed paths a number of times. And Bobby Heenan was managing Dewey Robertson when he became the missing link in Hawaii for the WWE. And on some of the cards from Detroit that my dad's, he saved a lot of the Body Press magazines, which was the publication from the Sheik's territory that was NWA in Detroit in the 70s. And on the cards, Dewey Robertson is on the card listed as Dewey Robertson. And my dad is wrestling as Pampero Firpo. And later Dewey Robertson was managed by Bobby Heenan and adopted the missing link. And so people who are my age, like in their 40s, I remember the missing link from WWF. Like, no, my dad was the earlier missing link from Hawaii. So I'm wondering if Heenan, adopted that, because Heenan also was in Hawaii. And, it's funny too, like my dad wrestling, there are cards from Hawaii with him, with Jesse Ventura, Don Morocco. He crossed paths with some of the younger, the more modern guys, because his career was so broad, starting in the 50s. And he's like, I wrestled with your dad. I wrestled with your grandpa. He was, it's really amazing that he had such longevity, and he was doing, he was wrestling up until like he was in his early 50s. That's really, really remarkable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
My dog's doing a run-in on me right now. You got to get out of here. Go.
Oh,
I got three Siberian Huskies all staring at me.
Oh, right cute. I had a story about one of his injuries too that was kind of funny. He had this huge scar on his abdomen. It was like a vertical scar from like his sternum just all the way down to his belly button. It was really like, and he always was very hairy, had like a real hairy chest and everything, but you could see this huge scar. And I was looking through the scrapbooks that he kept and all the different after magazines that write these kayfabe stories, and that he was attacked by a group of fans in Omaha with knives and stuff. And, back in that era, that might've been real, that he was attacked with a knife. And so I asked my mom, I said, was that true? That he got attacked with a knife? This was a few years ago. And sometimes my dad didn't even want to tell me, like he would say, well, like, I won't talk about that. Like he still was keeping kayfabe. So my mom said, no, he had a bout of diverticulitis in Hawaii, and he had a perforated intestine. And I think he kind of ignored it. And he ended up being hospitalized in Hawaii for a few months and got like all these fan letters, and they worked it into storyline that he was injured, et cetera. But he was recovering from an operation for his intestines. So he had this huge vertical scar. And I asked Joanne Dusick, I said, did he get involved in a knife fight in Omaha? And she's like, no, that was just a promotional story. So even I, as his daughter, like sometimes I don't know where the line is between fact and fiction, And another thing too that's interesting, somebody had asked about Jim Cornette's podcast. He's been such a amazing resource. Like, my dad, he'll talk sometimes about like my dad and people of his ilk, like Bull Curry and the original Sheik. Bull Curry, also Lebanese, Fred Curry. He wrestled with Bull Curry in Texas and Louisiana, in Detroit territory. They wrestled everywhere. They had kind of a similar look, and and same thing, the Vachon, same thing, like that wild character that made you believe. And I was listening to Jim Cornette after the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Eddie Graham, and my dad wrestled with Dr. Jerry Graham. They were billed together in New York. He also wrestled with crazy Luke Graham. They went to Japan together, who was not related to the Grahams, but Luke Graham, Jerry Graham, and then Eddie Graham. I didn't know this. Cornette, he said his real name, and it escapes me right now. I don't know if you guys know off the top of your head, or maybe it wasn't his real name, but he was wrestling. Eddie Graham was wrestling under a different name. And I looked it up, and sure enough, like there was a card with my dad and Eddie Graham, but he wasn't wrestling as Eddie Graham. I got to look it up right now because I'm trying to remember what it was. But oh my gosh, thank you. I said I have a good wrestling. Gosh, I don't know what his professional name was.
Your memory is amazing. I'm going to tell you right. You articulate things so well about what you saw and how wrestling was. I mean, it's very, very good. Excellent.
Oh, yeah, I just found it. Rip Rogers. I just found it. Rip Rogers. That was one of Eddie Graham's wrestling names.
Rip Rogers.
My dad wrestled against Rip Rogers like early to mid 1960s. And I thought, and Cornette said that, and I thought, I'll be darned, Rip Rogers, R.I.P. Rip Rogers. And that was Eddie Graham. Yeah, I mean, just everyone, like the Von Erichs, anybody you could think of, he crossed paths with them and wrestled them. And who was your favorite wrestler growing up? Oh my gosh, Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Randy Savage, Jake the Snake, Rick Rude. I watched all the WWF stuff because I had tried watching like the NWA stuff, like with Jim Cornette and the Midnight and everything, Ric Flair, and I didn't like it as a kid. I thought it was like too scary. It looked too like Dusty Rhodes. It was too scary. I liked Dusty when he came to the WWE with the polka dots. I was like a little kid, So I liked all the
right.
I liked all the WWE stuff, like Junkyard Dog when he was in the WWE, when, the little cartoon Hillbilly Jim, like that was the kind of stuff I like because I was just a little girl, those were my favorite wrestlers growing up. I remember Randy Savage, of course, but I remember Lanny being the Genius, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, because I watched it as a little kid, but my dad, like, we wouldn't really talk about it together. He wouldn't watch it with me or anything. I just was interested myself as a fan. And then I would grab his scrapbooks. He had them on our bookshelf, and I would look through the scrapbooks. And it's fun. The only social media I have is the Twitter account. And I made that because I wanted my dad to connect with Bill Apter and George Napolitano, and they were on Twitter. And there was somebody else too who only had a Twitter account. And I thought, well, let me just make a Twitter account and connect them with people there. But it's been fun too, like Les Thatcher, Tom Pritchard. I think they're on Twitter, and sometimes they'll tweet something and they'll be on one of the cards, and or it's like another person, family member, like we'll see something. And I'm so grateful that he kept the memorabilia he kept. I wish that he kept more, but
that's hot commodity stuff now, dude. They got whole shows devoted now to people searching for some of the old gimmicks that some of these wrestlers wore, and had. So that's amazing. You kept everything, because I've heard several other interviews and read things about other guys that they either lost it in a flood or just moved so many times they lost all their memorabilia. And nowadays that stuff is it's hot. I mean, people want it. They want that stuff,
My dad always told me, he's like, don't sell those scrapbooks. He's like, I put my whole life into those. Like, don't sell those. They're like a family treasure. I had these. We have so many fires in California. I'm in the Bay Area and it's metropolitan, so we don't. Yeah, so it's like California is always burning down.
I'm north of you about 2 hours.
Okay. Yeah, I remember somebody asked Jim Cornette, like, if your house was on fire, what would you keep from your collection? He said his complete list of Sam Muchnick's promotion materials, right? And I just have these visions of me like grabbing this huge tub that's like 60 pounds of all these scrapbooks, like running down the stairs, like I'm trying to preserve my dad. So I went through with my phone and I just went through and like digitalized. I just took pictures of all the memorabilia that I could and put them on that Firpo1 Twitter account under the media section. There's a bunch of stuff, and
it's pretty incredible. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
It's also incredible that you're keeping his name alive.
Oh,
you really are. You're keeping his name out there in social media where people can see it, and they can say, "I seen that guy. I know that guy," and they do a little digging and they find out more about your dad and how the fantastic interviews and the matches that he put on. One thing I got to ask you though is, what was his favorite match? Did he ever have one?
He thought it was an honor to wrestle Luthez in Oregon, and probably in Portland. He wrestled Luthez in Oregon. He was really proud of that.
Right.
And Lou was really good to him. Sometimes they say people, Luthez like could be stiff with people who were like gimmick type wrestlers, but my dad had technical knowledge too, like he knew how to do technical holds. He just, he wrestled in that like wild, unorthodox, like hardcore type style, but he had an athletic background and, could do like shoot wrestling moves. So really considered an honor to wrestle against Luthez. He said that Karl Gotch tried to injure him in Hawaii. And that was another person who would take liberties. My dad said, if it weren't for my 23-inch neck, like he would have paralyzed me. So that was somebody he had a lot of disdain for, because my dad wouldn't, he always considered wrestling a business. It was like it was his business. It was his family's livelihood. He didn't try to injure people or he worked stiff, but he didn't try to, take, or he could work stiff, maybe not always, but yeah,
that was look good. He made it look good.
Yeah. Thank you. That was somebody who my dad said that he, had no respect for in that regard was Karl Gotch, because he tried to injure him. That was, that's like the shortest list. I can't really think of anybody else that he didn't, that he ever said anything bad about, So I know Luthez was a big thrill for him working in Madison Square Garden with Rocca, Pedro Morales, Bruno Sammartino, like I said, Tony Bourne, Angelo Savoldi, repeating myself, Nick Bockwinkel, oh my gosh, Don Leo Jonathan. He has a bunch of pictures too that are really cool. There's a photograph that he has, like a promo photo of Morris Siegel, and the promoter in Texas. And it says, to my friend Ivan, because my dad was wrestling as Ivan, he said, Morris Siegel wrote something like a man who knows the word friend in 7 languages or something, like this very affectionate inscription. And Rocca, the same thing. Like Rocca, there's a bunch of professional photos that I have from Rocca that are signed to my dad with like a paragraph of like an affectionate inscription to him, and so I know that those were some of his favorite matches. He liked Hawaii the best. Hawaii was his favorite territory. He liked going to Japan. He loved traveling. He loved meeting the fans. He liked the boys, he wrestled with the Funk, Terry Funk, Dory Funk, wrestled a senior in Texas. It's another big wrestling family too that my dad had worked with, besides like the Von Erichs, the Guerreros, Funks, Maivia.
Am I correct in saying he wrestled over 8,000 matches?
Close to 7,000. Yeah, close to 7,000. He later in his life, he started putting it as like 8,800, but it was 6,000. It was somewhere like 6,000, 6,400. Yeah.
Who hasn't he wrestled? Who hasn't he wrestled?
You really like
names? It's amazing.
You'd be hard pressed. I don't think he wrestled Billy Jack Haynes. That could be one that he did not wrestle. I don't think he did. Yeah, but like I said before too, Ray Stevens. He really loved Ray Stevens. Iron Sheik. I was sorry to hear Iron Sheik passed. Iron Sheik was billed as Ali Vaziri on a card that my dad had saved from AWA, Vern Gagne's territory. And Ali Vaziri was like the opening match. Like he was on the undercard because he was just getting started. And my dad also saved something from the WWF. It says WWF, but maybe they had just changed from WWF. And it was just like a list of who's who. Bob Backlund, I think, was the champion. Pat Patterson. And then Iron Sheik is there, but he's called Hossein Arab. So again, my dad, what did he say about the Iron Sheik? He loved the Iron Sheik. He said, what a true shooter. He talked to me about how Iron Sheik was the bodyguard for the Shah of Iran, which I think was true. I think that was true. I don't know. And the Iron Sheik was like an Olympic.
It was true.
It was true.
Yeah, he said, that was funny too. Like I said, it's hard to tell sometimes. Oh, another wrestling family. This is just from like a Texas thing. It says the rugged Wild Bull, the pompous will try to stop Iron Mike DiBiase. So, Ted DiBiase,
okay.
Just everywhere. But I was looking for a card with Bull Curry and Ivan the Terrible. Dan, there's everyone. Like he just wrestled everyone. I was at this podium.
Amazing.
Pretty crazy.
What a career.
What a career. And
what a career. And you're keeping his name alive, which is fantastic. Because that man's a legend. He is an absolute legend.
My pleasure.
So, Mary, while we got you on here, what would you like to promote? What do we have going on?
Well, you can find me.
Like, do you do conventions or anything?
Oh, no.
Wrestling conventions?
This is the card I wanted to show you. This is the card I want to show you. So this is just like a promo card, WWF, and it's Pat Patterson at the top, Bob Backlund, and Bruno Sammartino as the champions. And then you have people like Ivan Putski, Tatsumi Fujinami. And my dad saw him, just a quick Lanny Poffo. WWE was in San Jose for the induction of Randy Savage at WrestleMania in 2015. And we saw Tatsumi Fujinami. And I showed him the card. I said, my dad had this card. And he said he was showing his kids and his wife was there. He said, I was only 24 years old. He was happy to see my dad there. There's Ken Patera, Bobby Duncombe, just all kinds of, and then you have Dusty. My dad always said, he's a talker. And then there's my dad. And then next to my dad, of course, Mil Mascaras, who he wrestled in Mexico. It's just, you can't think of, there's Chavo Guerrero, Senior, Chavo Classic. It's like, you can't, and then also Bill Watts. He wrestled with Bill Watts, before Bill Watts became a promoter. So you can't, you really can't think of anybody really from that era that he didn't cross paths with. So I don't do conventions. You can find me on Twitter. My brother, John, has a Facebook just under his own name, John Kochmanian. I think he's involved in some wrestling groups there. And I just have that Twitter, PFIRPO #1, Firpo1. And that's where I just post all the different media and things, like when my aunt comes up with things like that poster I showed earlier. And this is a good one too. He wrestled with Piper in the 70s. It's Roddy Piper and my dad in San Jose in 2015.
Great picture. That is excellent. Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Piper, what a heart. Piper was, oh my gosh, one of my favorites growing up. And he had such a good heart. He was so sweet. And he said, Piper was telling my dad the story. He said, Butcher and Mad Dog would just tell me the story over and over about a rib that they pulled on you when you and they were riding up and down the road in like Nebraska and Texas. And I was wondering, I thought, where did Piper and Mad Dog Vachon cross paths with my dad? And it was for the LaBelle territory in Los Angeles. And there's some video footage. I have a YouTube. I barely put anything on there. It's Mary Elizabeth CA. Jim Cornette sent me a DVD with different matches of my dad from the Olympic Auditorium against Ernie Ladd. My dad was the Three Americas champion, which they put on him. That was like the inaugural, like they just put the belt on him, the Three Americas champion. And He wrestled against Ernie Ladd for that title, and he wrestled different people there. The Sheik was in at the Olympic Auditorium, and there was a Haystacks Calhoun, and there was a pull apart, and somebody's like running down. I put it on the YouTube. It's Mary Elizabeth CA. It just says different footage with the Sheik and my dad in a cage match, and there's a pull apart, and somebody's running down, and it looks like Piper. And somebody said that in the comments. They said, "Who's that guy like pulling apart, like grabbing, my dad by the legs or trying to interfere?" And they said that looks like Roddy Piper in that Los Angeles territory, like mid 1970s, late 1970s. So he got a huge kick out of talking with my dad. And I was just in the background. I wish, again, I put that also on my Pampero Firpo Twitter account. I wish I would have videotaped it more. When my dad saw Bruno at WrestleMania, he saw Piper. Like, I wish I would have done more. He saw Brett, and he and Bret Hart were talking about. My dad went up to Calgary, and I don't know how many matches he did for Stu, but I think he did wrestle for Stu. He certainly knew Stu and saw him at Cauliflower Alley, and there's some footage of that. And another, just what a fantastic family, the Harts. Yeah, I'm trying to learn. I'll show you one last picture. When we went to the PWHF Hall of Fame, this is my brother and me and my dad. And then this is Ross. Yeah. This is Ross Hart, Brett's brother, and Ross is like the Hart family historian. So he was like he's like, some of these people just have encyclopedic memories. Like Mike Lano is one, Lenny Poffo, Jim Cornette, Ross Hart. Like they have this pinpoint recall. He's like, Firpo, you came to see us in whatever date he said, August of 1972, and you stay. I mean, it's just like amazing. And it really was an interesting time period in the wrestling business with all the traveling they did and the territories and the people whose path they crossed. I wish there was more footage of that you could see. I wish there was more out there. And I know so much of that footage was destroyed. It's like, yeah, hard. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
What a guest. What a guest. Motor.
Absolutely wonderful. Man,
guest.
Amazing.
You're Motorhead. You can call me. I'm like Motor Mouth. My students say that too. They're like, you have to slow down. You talk so fast. When I start talking, I get so excited. This is my dad's little GQ photo of him when he was like 21, 22. Right.
Look at that handsome devil. Look at him.
Look at that. Look at that.
What made him grow the hair and the beard out?
That's a really good question. He always had the beard because of the Ivan the Terrible. Let me pull up a picture of that. That's like a fantastic gimmick look that he had. So he didn't always have the beard. This is when he started. So he looks like he does in the photo. And he wrestled with short hair when he was in Oregon, in the Oregon territory. His hair was a little bit shorter than it is, but let me find that Ivan the Terrible. It's a good picture of him with Steve Austin. He went to a WWE house show and he saw Steve Austin, he saw The Rock. This was like 1999, maybe. 1999, I think, in San Jose. He went to a house show and saw The Rock, and he saw Steve Austin. He saw Mick Foley, like that. He saw Kurt Angle. That was fun for him. I don't know how many of them watched him growing up, and this is the Ivan the Terrible gimmick.
Good Lord, look at that guy.
Isn't that great?
Wow, and that's amazing.
I mean, it's such a cool, yeah. So I think
I'm having flashbacks of being scared again.
Yeah. That was just such a great look for him, like the beard and the hair and the wild, So he
had that in the early '60s, the long hair.
Yeah, he did.
Which is unusual for a man to have that hair that long running around the early '60s. You didn't see that.
He always he just put it back, like if he was out and about or doing something, or when he got married, he just put it back. But Bill Apter in the interview that is on YouTube with my dad, it was from 2012. My dad was 82, almost 82. And Bill said, "What happened to the long hair?" And my dad said, "Well, a time comes in society when he said, a time comes when you have to look a little more acceptable in society." So it's my dad signing autographs in Hawaii. I love this. All the little kids just loved him. Wow. I mean, they were scared of him. The kids were scared of him. This is his 23-inch neck on display with doing something. What is that? Like a Boston crab.
Yeah. Well, Boston crab action.
Yeah, I love that picture. He was incredibly strong and just such a good guy. Oh, I miss him.
For a man of his stature, he weighed 240.
Look, yeah, he was 5'8". 5'8", and he weighed 240. But I think the hair and the beard added to the impression of his height, because they put him, nobody hesitated to work him with the big men like Tex McKenzie in Detroit, 6'5", Ernie Ladd, Bruiser Brody. He tag teamed with Andre in the Detroit territory. He tag teamed with Andre. They were partners, like Andre, and my dad, should have mentioned him. My dad loved Andre. He always had a sympathy for Andre. This is a great photo. This is my dad and Andre, and my dad's boots are like off the ground. This is in Ohio.
Oh wow.
That's great.
Excellent.
I had a Facebook page like 10 years ago that I deleted, and I just wrote that was like hanging with Andre the Giant. And he's got him like up on the thing. But my dad always felt a sympathy for Andre because, Andre couldn't be anonymous. This is them in Hawaii together. It's like Andre, he couldn't hide, like he couldn't be anonymous. Like he couldn't go undercover. He always had to be. This is Andre and my dad against the Sheik and Bulldog Don Kent. It's my dad and Andre in Detroit. So they wrestled. Like I said, my dad was 5'8", and he's like, I was in a big man's game, but he thought of himself as a big man. They put him as a tag team with Andre. They put him against Baba and Inoki and Jumbo Shiruda and all these like big, big people. It's Andre in Hawaii too. He wrestled with Andre in Hawaii.
And Larry Bradford Jr. says, a complete gem, long live Pampero Firpo.
Thank you. I'm probably going over time, but thanks for having me on. And it was really nice to talk with all of you.
Hey,
I appreciate
it. We were just going to do a half hour, but you're such a dynamite guest. We let you roll and roll and roll. Thank you so much. We can't thank you enough.
I have to give one more plug because I know he gets a lot of love, but he gets a lot of hate and trolls too. But Dave Meltzer is awesome. He's on that short list of people with that love for wrestling and that encyclopedic recall.
Man. Amazing
Dave lives in San Jose, and we connected in person at my dad's funeral, and Mike Lano was there, and he's been great. He's been such a good friend, and he's somebody also that I can ask him, and he just comes out of nowhere. He's like, 1993, 1964, 1970, and he's like, he's got that. He's
a wrestling savant.
Yeah. So I'm just the smallest. Like I couldn't even. Would never put
the Rain Man of professional wrestling, Dave Meltzer. He could just bang those statistics right off.
And it's like he's not even trying, he just knows. I learn. I enjoy talking. I'm grateful to be able to talk with those luminaries, and they share their knowledge, and it's a lot of fun. So it was really nice to talk with both of you. Also, I hope we got to some of what you wanted to talk about, and you know where to find me.
Absolutely, and more.
Oh, good.
And more.
Good.
You covered everything we wanted to know and more. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good.
Your dad is still loved by so many people around the world.
Thank you.
The man's a legend. And the people who love the old professional wrestling will not let his memory die, believe me. Remember the Wild Boar of Pampas. My God,
I still have my own team because of him. It's my own team.
Thank you. Well,
I'm going to write a letter to WWE for when they had the what's the name of that show that he had on A&E, WWE, where they go
like the wrestling,
all the wrestling memorabilia.
Yeah.
Look at your events. Go hunt down Shimu. We know who's got it.
I really appreciate your interest in keeping the stories alive, also, and giving a platform for this. It's really been a fun experience to come and share and talk to both of you.
Once again, thank you very much, Mary. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Take care now.
You too. Thank you.
And I think you're going to have to close your browser window because there you go. All right. Well, what can you say about that? What can you say about that guest, dude? Fantastic.
Yeah. You know what? Wow. The memory, the recall, the fact, amazing, absolutely amazing how she put it all out there like that. It's like, wow, I totally impressed, completely impressed, man. That was a good lesson for me again too, because I learned a lot more than I knew about Pampero Firpo and a lot of the people that he had the pleasure and the honor of being in the ring with.
She didn't know us. She didn't need us. I mean, she didn't need us at all. Just turn the mic on and let her roll. That was fantastic.
There you go. Get it.
Yeah.
And
Well, we had some other things we were going to talk about.
What's that?
I said we had a few other things we were going to talk about. If you want to go and go over the news of the week,
let's roll some newer info and whatever we got. Let's hit it.
Right.
I know one thing. Today in wrestling history, June 25th, 1968. 1968. The great one himself, who we all remember as Bobo Brazil, defeated Giant Baba in Nagoya, Japan. Got the NWA International Heavyweight belts, and then unfortunately lost it 2 days later. Also on this day in history, June 25th, 1990, Legion of Doom made their debut in WWF on, God dang it, it was called, Superstars of Wrestling. On Superstars of Wrestling in Dayton, Ohio. That was their first TV taping for WWF before they went on to do whatever they did in WWF, Legion of Doom. We know what they did. They did a whole bunch, but that was the first one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Legion of Doom, and everyone balked when they changed the name from the Road Warriors to the Legion of Doom, but of course they have to go and they got to copyright all the names. They have to own a piece of you when you sign on with them. So I like the fact that they took the nickname that they used in the NWA and AEWA, Legion of Doom, and made that the main name in WWE. So I'm glad that they didn't veer from that. Wrestling history, man, it's just so rich. It's just absolutely, it's amazing. All the different stories. Still, there's a lot of stories that are that float around today, which are floated around by AEW and all the drama they're having with CM Punk and the Elite. It seems there's two camps in AEW you're aware of.
Oh, yeah.
One camp's the Elite, which is the Young Bucks, Hangman Page, and Kenny Omega. And the other camp is CM Punk and FTR, Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs, and whoever else is on that show. Andrade might be limped into the
poor Andrade.
Punk camp. Yeah. But the funny thing is, and I'm going to pull this up right now, it's a tweet that Dash Hardwood, known as, I think he's known as FTR Bald, or Bald FTR on Twitter, on the Twitter, he posted a tweet and deleted it right away. And hang on a second. It says he posted this on June 23rd, 11:30 in the morning. There was rumors floating around that a top star left the show pissed off from last week's, this past week's AEW Dynamite Wednesday edition, because CM Punk wasn't supposed to be there, but they brought him in at the last minute to do a run-in at the beginning of the show with the Juice Robinson, Switchblade, and the Gun Club. The Gun Club was wrestling the Hardy Boys. And Juice Robinson and Jay White ran in and interfered. And I believe it was a DQ. The Hardy Boys got their butts beat, stomped out by four guys. In runs FTR, Ricky Starks, and CM Punk. So with that being said, Dax post, this one will get me some heat, but F it. It needs to be said. Whatever top star left the show in a bad mood because of a certain individual was there, instead of running to Dave Meltzer, why not just tell the individual face to face? That's how we used to do things back in the day. Because we like to talk about how things are done back in the day. All of these crybabies in this business would get told about themselves back in the day, and there might be some fisticuffs involved. But it just boggles my mind, man. And I had to do the process of elimination.
Yeah, there's and the whole division of the locker room thing, and how they did those two separate shows because they knew damn well that to get Punk back, he's not going to wrestle with the little kids, with Kenny and the little boys. He's not going to do it, And I think
they didn't want to wrestle with him. They didn't want to wrestle with him. So.
Yeah, they didn't want to wrestle with him either. And I think the direction right now that AEW is portraying, at least with that Collision show, is I think that to me is going to be the AEW that I wanted to see when AEW started. That's going to be the one that I'm going to go, okay, they got Samoa Joe in there with him. So it's like, we know all of the history of Samoa Joe and how well he's done over the years. And he's still a powerhouse type of guy. He can still bring it. He can bring the mail and people still show up to see him. But the other guys in the elite, I never got it from day one, and I still don't get it. And I think Tony Khan, well, I don't think, but I hope someday he realizes by doing this, might work out, but it might have detrimental effects later on down the road.
You're right about that. And I just watched the show last night, AEW Collision, which I enjoyed. I did like it. I like it better than Dynamite because it's got a different feel. We talked about that last week.
Agreed.
It's got a bit of an old school feel. In fact, it opened with an old school promo. And I saw right away someone on Twitter says, who wants to watch this? I do. I know you do. I love CM Punk.
I do
FTR.
too.
It's
awesome.
like a throwback to the days of Anderson and Blanchard as a tag team.
Yeah, sure. FTR to this day, and right now, to me, they're one of the bright spots and probably one of the best, if not the best tag teams in all of wrestling. I love those guys. They're amazing.
Yes. Yeah. So did you see the end of the show last night?
No, I missed the show, unfortunately. I still had family up from the, the thing, and I didn't get to see the end of the show.
Well, the main event was a rerun, basically, of last week's main event with an extra person. It was Ricky Starks and CM Punk and FTR, and they were up against the Gun Club, Billy Gunn's sons, who are in their roles for being rookies, new guys. Fantastic. I know they're picking their father's brain. Billy Gunn is 60 years old now, and he looks fantastic.
He's
unbelievable.
Amazing. He looks absolutely incredible. It's like, dang, 60? Man, what kind of water are you drinking, pal? Come on, send some in there. I could use a little bit.
It ain't water, pal. It's a
no,
lot of these guys. A lot of these guys are. Well, let's not say. I'm not even. No. Gotta stop. But anyway, at any rate, great show. Those two and Jay White and Juice Robinson, who used to be C.J. Parker in NXT. Juice Robinson was in NXT, and they let him go. I don't know why, but he went to Japan, carved out a name for himself over there in the name Juice Robinson, and he's got a nice little career going for him right now. Plus, he's married to Tony Storm, so he's doing all right for himself. Anyway, they put on a wrestling clinic last night for a half hour. The last half hour of AEW Collision, worth a watch. You can watch the beginning of the 2-hour show. You watch the end of the 2-hour show. You really didn't miss much in the middle. A lot of these shows right now, WWE included, are all setting up for the big pay-per-view. AEW's is tonight, Forbidden Door.
Right, Forbidden Door.
All their ducks are in a row. You know who all the matches are, all the Japanese talent that's coming in to Forbidden Door. And also WWE shows this week. Raw was boring as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
We talked about that on the phone earlier. It was a placeholder.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It was lukewarm water at best, in my opinion. And like we were talking about earlier, there's and I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like there's less and less wrestling happening and more promo, run-in, backstage thing, and commercials. So what we're talking, a 3-hour program, what do we think? There was about around an hour of wrestling, an hour of actual wrestling show, Well,
in a network TV show, listen to this, in a network TV show, in 1 hour, you only have 44 minutes of entertainment content. The other 15 minutes is all commercials. In a half-hour TV show, you've got 22 minutes of entertainment content. The rest is commercials and promotions for whatever the network shows are. You might as well say they're commercials too for the network programs. So it's very, very limited. But if you 44, that's 88. It should be an hour and a half, roughly.
Yeah.
Now, hour and a half now.
Hour and what?
About 2 hours. It should be about 2 hours of regular content in a 3-hour show. But if you, like you said, if you subtract everything, you probably got about an hour of wrestling. And that's a shame. Jason Ingham says any new wrestling acts or gimmicks will never meet or beat what the old days of wrestling provided. And he's right about that.
100%. Right on the head right there. 100%.
Not many people you believe in nowadays. I believe in Brock Lesnar. I believe in who else is actually
Gunther.
At that level?
I like Gunther.
Perfect. Gunther and Imperium. Those guys are the real deal.
Excellent.
They're the real deal. Yes.
Oh, Donnie Gravesayer says there's about 10 wrestlers to pay attention to in WWE. The rest is filler. And something else we just mentioned, right, Johnny Bottles? That's correct.
Absolutely. And it's almost like when he says the rest is filler, it's almost like the old saying, and the world needs ditch diggers too. You need people to do the job. You need mid-card guys. You need guys to be the prelim guys to jerk the curtain, like they used to say.
Yeah.
And get the fans fired up. And some people are happy in that role, and other people aren't. I don't understand what's going on with I know they're trying to get WWE talent from the main roster to go into NXT to boost up the ratings. But I don't understand what they're doing with Dana Brooke. Dana Brooke she wrestles in the main event a lot, which is strictly Peacock-only show. She used to be on Raw, and they phased her out. And she's probably was just sitting in catering, unused. And now they've got her on NXT, and everybody's ragging on her down at NXT and on her performances. She's been on there the last 2 weeks, I believe. What's the purpose of doing something like that with somebody like Dana Brooke, who I'm sure is a
lost on that one
nice
again,
woman.
Too.
I'm sure she's a nice woman.
Lost on that.
Everyone who you ask about, everyone you talk to, I should say, and you ask them about Dana Brooke at wrestling, they'll say she's a nice person. She does anything that the company asks her to do, any kind of promotional work. When they have opening day ticket sales for different arenas around the country, they'll send somebody in major markets to go and promote on radio programs and all that, and morning shows on television that, hey, we're in town and the show's coming up, blah, 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 get your tickets now. Especially when they have major shows like SummerSlam, WrestleMania, they'll send like a little street team in to do some promotional work. And I've heard that they've used her for that. She has no problem doing that. She loves it. But let's just say the ditch diggers, Jason Ingham chimes in again, the ditch diggers in the old days, we cut, slapped, and hammered. And we'll make a match entertaining all the way until the bell. He's right about that.
Another solid point. Another straight up solid point, man. That is right on the money again.
Absolutely.
Hey, Johnny, do we have time to plug a book?
Let's plug a book.
I would like to plug a book. Try to do this once a week if we can. Wrestling Observer Press, written mainly by Tom Billington, the one and only himself, Dynamite Kid. This book, Pure Dynamite right here. If you don't have it, it's on Amazon, it's on eBay, it's on several other formats, but this is an amazing book, front to back. Another one you'll start reading that you just can't put down after a while. And there's some things in there that will get under your skin, but it's the truth told about the mighty Dynamite. You know, one of my favorite wrestlers growing up as a kid, and especially early on when I got to see those clips of him in Tiger Mask back in Japan. I was like, oh my gosh! And you know, a lot of people today adopted those styles, but Dynamite doesn't get the credit like a lot of the other ones do. You know, you hear about other people getting, he was an influence, but a lot of the newer wrestlers that do the high risk maneuvers like that do the flips, that do all the super athletic stuff, I hardly ever hear anybody mention Dynamite's name, and it's a shame. No. You know, if anybody saw Dark Side of the Ring, you know that what what happened. You know what happened, but as far as
not a nice man, not a nice guy.
No, sir. Exactly. But as far as the contribution to pro wrestling and what he did in the ring and the impact he had on it, excellent read. You guys check it out. Wrestling Observer Press.
I've read that book, as a matter of fact, and I loved it. And you're right. He brought over a lot of the techniques and moves from Japan when he spent some time over there. He brought that into the WWF when he tagged with Davey Boy Smith. And what about that snap suplex, dude? His famous snap suplex he would do.
So fast. I've never seen anybody do it as fast as he ever did, ever. And to take that weight and transfer it like that, the way he did it and the speed at which he did it, never seen anybody else do it like that. Never.
His downfall was the injuries and all the steroids he pumped himself up with and put all that muscle mass on such a small body. He had a small frame. And his body just – the same thing with Eddie Guerrero. When Eddie Guerrero got big to become the champ, he wanted to prove to Vince that he could be counted on as a heavyweight champion in the WWF. And he did the same thing. He put on too much muscle mass and it was bad for his heart. And we know what happened to Eddie. But Dynamite Kid, he just – all his internal organs were probably ravaged from the chemicals, and his body, his spine, just couldn't take it. It couldn't hold up. Carrying around all that weight from the muscle mass and all those injuries, it was a shame. Innovator, Dynamite Kid. What an innovator he was. It's a shame.
Yes, sir. You got anything else, Bottles, before we wrap this? Or
he was idolized by Chris Benoit.
Yes, he was.
Chris Benoit loved Dynamite Kid.
Yep, absolutely. And look at the physiques and look at the stuff they did. I mean, you could tell Benoit, one of his biggest influence was Dynamite Kid. Absolutely, by the way he entered the ring, by that look on his face, the way he did. I mean, throwing guys in the ropes, you could definitely tell he was a big influence.
The diving headbutt.
Diving headbutt. Jeez Louise. They call that what the...
Dude, I feel like I'm on information overload from all that old-time wrestling knowledge that she dropped on us, man. It was unbelievable. Fantastic guest.
Full. Let's, hey, Johnny Bottles, take us home, brother. Take us home.
We'd like to thank all of you for watching this podcast. It's someone I've been trying to get on the show for a long time, and I'm glad it all came together. It gelled. If there's any other children of wrestlers who were legendary who want to come on, if you happen to be watching, of course, that'd be fantastic. Just contact Totem Pole Nation, contact us, Coach Troy Taylor. This has been a true delight. Like I said, I'm on information overload from Mary Free. She was a great guest, fantastic. I'm fanboying over the whole thing now, Motor. You know that? I feel verklempt. So don't forget.
I didn't know what to expect, because I didn't know anything about her. Nothing. I knew stuff about Pampero, but once she started talking, I was like, holy crap, right on. She knew her stuff.
We're just two guys. Usually there's three of us. Big Don Wayne's not here. He's getting his oil changed tomorrow, and he's resting up for that. And you know what I'm talking about, buddy.
Yeah.
So,
hang in there, Don. Yeah, and a shout out to all the other hashtag SCM brothers out there. If you tuned in, thank you. If you haven't, check it out. But appreciate everything you guys are still doing with us. And we're going to keep this rocking and rolling, fellas.
Just a few of us on screen, but there's a lot of us out there who love old-time wrestling, especially right here at Totem Pole Nation. If you haven't liked or subscribed to Totem Pole Nation, do it now. We're just a little piece of dandruff trying to get ahead, okay? So go ahead, subscribe, like if you like what you see, and we'll be at you next week at our regular time, 4 p.m. You can find us on Twitter, hashtag SCM, hashtag Totem Pole Nation. You can find us on Facebook, Totem Pole Nation. Look us up. God bless you all. Long live Pampero Firpo, the Wild Bull of the Pampas.